Hi, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use my NC package for matching any number of things in some subject strings or in a subject string. So here, the example that we were looking at before is matching these chromosome position, chromosome genomic range strings. So here it's always chromosome name, colon, start position, dash, end position. And so sometimes here you only have the start position and no end position. And sometimes you have, here in the third subject, you have a genomic range on chromosome 1 and a genomic range on chromosome 2. So you have two different ranges that you might want to extract. In the previous screencast, we saw how to construct a regular expression to parse that out, that information out. And so executing that code again, here we have defined a couple of sub patterns, pause pattern, and maybe end. And we're going to use those sub patterns here with the capture first vec function to create this match DT, a data table of matches. Looking at it, it's got one row for every one of those inputs that we provided. So since the input is character vector of length 3, it's always going to have 3 rows. It's one for every one of those rows is going to be the first match of the given regular expression in each of those subject strings. And every one of those columns is going to correspond to the names which are given in the pattern. So here you can either give the names as named arguments to the capture first vec function, like for here for chrome start and chrome end, or you see that here there's a sub pattern variable maybe end, which is it's a list that contains a named element which will be used for creating that third group. So any one of the names in the list subpattern variables or in the arguments to capture reverse vec will be interpreted as columns in the column names of the output or capture groups in the regular expression. So what if we want, so here you notice for the third subject we only have this chromosome 1 position that was extracted, but we see that there's also this second one. So what if we wanted to extract this second one as well as the first one? So to do that, what we can do is we can use another function called nc capture. So it's going to be capture all stir. So it's going to be capturing all of the matches in a given subject string. So what it's going to do is it's going to interpret the first argument as the subject again, and the rest of the arguments as a pattern. And so if we run this now, we will see that now we have 4 matches. So the first 3 matches come from so the first 2 matches come from the first 2 subjects again, and then the matches, the rows number 3 and 4 of the output, they come from the third subject, right, which had these two chromosome genomic range strings, right? So now we get to extract both of them because we specified that that we want to capture all of the things in the given subject string. And so note that we've lost information about which subject that came from. So so that is kind of an inherent property of this nc capture all string stir function, and that is by design because I found that it's quite useful to it's often very useful to have a multi-line string as input and not having to worry about pasting it yourself. So what if you did want to keep the information about what subject each one of these things came from? So to do that, the recommended way of doing this is to create a data table. So instead of having this cur pos vec thing, let's call it cur pos dt. And so this is going to be a data table with just one row, say range, or let's call it pause, yeah. pause equals cur pause vec. Yeah. So our cur pause dt looks like this. So it's just a data table with one column. And so what we can do is we can use data table operations now um, to kind of keep the information about which subject this came from. So let me give you an example. So here we're going to use the data table square brackets to with no first argument, and the second argument is going to be nc capture all stir, and the subject that we want to use is going to be the pause again, this subject, and then we're going to say by equals pause, right? And so what it's going to do is for every unique value of that pause position string, it's going to call capture all stir on it, and then it's going to give a data table, and then it's going to combine the results back, and let's see what it gets, right? So must have at least one argument, named argument capture group, right? So we can't just give the subject by itself, we have to give a pattern. So let's give the same pattern that we had before. Here, let's call that, range pattern. How about that? Range pattern. Right, so range pattern is going to be our whole thing that we were using before. And again, if we use that with capture all stir, we get this data table with 4 rows, 1 row for each match in any of those subjects, or actually the single subject formed by pasting all of those subjects together with new lines. And if we use that same thing in this format now, let's see, range pattern, what do we get? Well, we get a data table now that has some information about which subject each match came from. So here we see that the first row, the subject was this guy, the second row, the subject was this guy, and third and fourth rows, the subject was the same thing here. So that's the recommended way of going forward if you want to keep track of which subject the matches came from. So another way of doing it is you can create like some kind of position, or sorry, like subject ID variable. Here I'm creating a variable which is just from 1 to n. Here now my cur pause dt looks like this, and so then we can think about doing a match. We can think about doing by equals subject ID instead of by equals pause, and then we can get something like this, where here we have a column of the output that says what is the ID number or initial subject index that the match came from. Here it came from the third subject, here the second, the first one, right? So that's the recommended way of working with NC capture all stir, and that's how I recommend that you parse multiple matches of a regex to some subjects. Thanks for listening.